yeah, basically to kind of start our conversation, why don't you give people who haven't heard of you or your YouTube channel kind of what you're doing now and how you got started?
Oh man. Well, I've been doing this for a long time. So my name's John, or online Obese Beast. So obviously that name has a little story behind it. So when I was 20 years old, I was at my heaviest weight of about 400 pounds, 360. I don't really know the exact weight. And I decided I wanted to lose weight, and I started losing weight. And once I had lost a good amount, I actually started an Instagram page, which I named Obese Beast because I thought it sounded cool. And I was surprised no one had taken it yet. And so I was like, all right, cool, I'll take that. Why not? Didn't think anything of it. I wasn't planning on making it any sort of thing. I just was like, honestly, I felt bad that I was posting so much weight loss stuff on my regular Instagram. So I was like, all right, let's make an Instagram that's only for that, just so I'm not annoying all my friends and family with this stuff. Not that they ever said they were being annoyed, but I just kind of wanted something that was separate. And so I started that. And then eventually that turned into me making YouTube videos, and the YouTube videos ended up going, I had some that went viral that really kind of changed my life. This is all very short version because I don't want to take up too much of our time. Some videos went viral, which allowed me to make YouTube my full-time job. This was after I'd worked a lot of jobs, a lot of like part-time jobs, working 2 jobs at a time, you know how it is. And so since 2015, maybe, I've been doing YouTube full time, maybe early 2016. I don't know exactly what it was, but I've been doing YouTube since 2014, maybe, and full time basically since 2015. And now, I make YouTube videos, pretty much any social media that you can think of. I'm there. And obviously the videos they started out being just me sharing my journey, and then trying to help anyone that, was struggling with their weight. And more recently, they've turned into more commentary-based videos because I'm old and I've been doing this for a long time. So a lot of them are like commentary-based videos on the fitness industry, weight loss industry, health at every size. Anything you can think of that has weight or health related, I'll probably talk about it to some extent. And I still sprinkle in some trying to help people lose weight. But the stance I have with weight loss is that the stuff that I've said 5 years ago is still applicable, right? So it's like, calories in, calories out, move your body, yada, yada, yada. All that stuff is still the same. So I try not to just say the same thing over and over again. So that's why I kind of morphed into doing more commentary-based stuff, because it allows me to make content about this stuff while still not just completely repeating myself over and over again. That is the shortened version, I guess. Yeah.
Perfect. Love the shortened version. So I recently discovered you, like, I think in June, because I was dog sitting. And whenever I dog sit, I just go through like these like periods of like just marathoning different YouTube channels, like everything that they've talked about.
Mm-hmm.
And your story really interested me because you do commentary on like toxic like body images, but like on both extreme ends, which is interesting because you've been basically on both ends. So like, when did it start? Like, what was the catalyst, or did something like piss you off, or was there like a specific moment where you're like, okay, I just need to say something about what's going on?
That's a good question. I've never really been asked it that way. I think so for me, the first thing I realized was, so when I first got into losing weight and all that stuff, I was probably the toxic person I talk about now. Not intentionally, but it was because I was just like, oh, you need to grind hard and you need to eat as little as possible, right? I wasn't saying that when I made my stuff, but I'm like, when I first started losing weight, if I had a YouTube channel, I would have been that guy, like, because I was very caught into it. And so, kind of to your point, I think the first thing I noticed was the dangers of really the fitness industry and how much problems it did cause certain people. And so, like, for a little bit of backstory, I competed in a physique show in 2016, right? And so I went from one extreme to another. So that was when I got to my lowest weight, which was 180 pounds. And for me, that isn't sustainable. Like, I weigh 215 is kind of where I sit healthily, like right now, right? And so 180 was like really, really lean for me. And for me to get to that point, it required me to do things that I wouldn't necessarily recommend that are healthy, right? And so I think that was my first inkling of, hey, maybe this isn't all good, and there are some bads to the fitness industry, because before that it was new and I was just like all in. I have really bad ADHD, so I get hyper focused on stuff, and I was like hyper focused on, oh, the fitness industry, it's the greatest thing in the world, and I couldn't see. I had all these blinders on, but it's all like rose-colored glasses, right? Everything is good and it's awesome. And I think I started to notice there were some not great things, right? And I started to notice that. But then fast forward a few years, before that, still, I really wasn't talking about it. I just had these thoughts, right? Fast forward a few years, I actually started having people say that my name, Obese to Beast, was like fat phobic. And up until that point, I had never really thought about that. I had never had anyone say that to me. And it started happening more and more. And then that was probably around 2018, 2019. And then 2020 was when it really started to ramp up, like the fat positivity or health at every size movement really started to kind of ramp up. And I started to see more and more videos about it, and people talking about it's healthy to be any size that you want. And I was like, that's interesting. And I kind of looked into it, and I've always said, like, my stance is I'm not fully against health at every size. I think there's a lot, and I mean it, a lot of stuff that they say that I completely agree with. One of the biggest ones is healthcare and people being treated poorly because of their size in healthcare. I think that is I think it's a big deal, and I personally dealt with it. I had many, many times when I went to the doctor when I was at my heaviest, or even not even at my heaviest yet, where they made me feel like an absolute piece of garbage. And it made me never want to go back again. And that I didn't go to the doctors for a long time, like 10 plus years because of that, right? And so there was a lot of stuff that I agree with, but there were just certain things that I disagreed with. And so that's kind of when I started making the videos talking about my opinions and my thoughts on both health at every size and the things that I disagree with there, fat positivity, all that stuff, as well as the fitness side of things and how extreme that is and how I disagree with some of that stuff as well. And so I don't want to be like, oh, I'm a centrist, I'm in the middle, but like I just have my thoughts and I try to share what I feel, I don't want to say is right, but just how I feel, right? And that's kind of, and coming from a position of, I used to be obese, now I used to be obese, and now I am, at this position where I'm not. But it's a struggle because a lot of times people that used to be bigger, there is a severe, okay, this is my own opinion. If I feel like there's a severe lack of empathy, and they're just like, well, I did it, so you should do it too. Like, if I can do it, anybody can. And to a certain extent, I agree with that. I am rambling, I know. To a certain extent, I agree with that. Like, I grew up incredibly poor. I had no money. I was taken away from my mom when I was a kid. Like, all of this stuff. I didn't have a good life, okay? And I was still able to do it, yes. But there were a lot of things that helped me along the way that I understand not everyone has access to, right? And so, like, I'm in the middle of, yes, I agree, like, we should be working on ourselves, and those things are important, but also there are things that are out of some people's control that absolutely makes it harder for them to lose weight. And so for me to be like, just because I did it, so you should be able to do it. So I don't care if whatever issue you might have. I don't fall down that road. But at the same time, I'm not going to sit here and say you could be 400 pounds and be healthy. I'm sorry. Like, it's just not going to happen. I'm not going to say that you're a bad person or that you deserve to be treated poorly. And then the same exact thing when it goes to, people that are like super into health and they push really, really hard, and like these really, really toxic body standards and unrealistic stuff that is being pushed by the other side, right? Of like fitness and like being hyper fit. I don't agree with that, because at the end of the day, like, for me, what's important to me is that people are healthy. Okay. And you cannot, in my opinion, be healthy on either extreme, right? There are negatives to both of those things. And that's kind of where I'm at. Short answer, I know.
No, that was great. Thank you for that. And I'm kind of curious because, in society in general, there's, for male and female, so much pressure when it comes to, like you're saying, body image on both sides. And there's so many conversations of body positivity and things like that. And I'm curious, do you feel like people were more comfortable commenting on your body image before, or kind of where you're at now? And how does that make you feel? Is it like kind of a negative, like, oh, you feel okay commenting on my body now type thing? Is that like an uncomfortable, I don't know, conversation that you've had to have with friends and family in certain situations?
I've been very lucky that as far as like close friends and family, have always been very supportive. Like, my mom is still my biggest fan. Like, she she had a lot of guilt herself of like, she's told me this story where sometimes she used to walk by my room. She would look in my room and see this big blob, right? Is what she'd say. And that was me. Not in a mean, like she said this to me after I had lost the weight, right? She was just like, this is how she felt, right? And she just felt like it was her fault, right? And so she felt this tremendous amount of guilt. And so when I lost the weight, like for her, that was almost like a huge gift to her, right? This like huge weight lifted off her shoulders. So she never was like, I can't believe how big you are. You need to lose the weight. It was more like she knew I should, and that like she was worried about me, right? Like when I was in high school, I actually almost got a lap band, which is just a surgery that they basically put something around your stomach to allow you to eat less. It's not really popular anymore. There's some issues with it, but I was in high school. I live in San Diego, and UCSD was doing a trial with people under 18. And I think I'm not sure if it was low income under 18 or because it was like free, right? It's because there was no way we were going to be able to afford it. I ended up not doing that. Like she always cared, right? And so I never had her like intentionally doing anything to hurt my feelings. And as far as like public and like being in high school and being bigger, I was relatively lucky, but also not, because I didn't have that many people make fun of my size, even though I was like the biggest kid in high school. The reason they didn't is because I did it before they could. Like I made fun of myself a lot, which was a double-edged sword. It was good because I wasn't getting bullied, but I also had zero self-esteem and I felt like I was a piece of garbage, right? Because I was always making fun of myself. So like everyone else, I felt like they probably didn't see much value in me, right? Because it's just like, oh, it's just John. He just makes fun of himself all the time. Like, they might make offhand comments because they just like, well, I've heard you say it about yourself, so why should, And so I was lucky with that. I think I deal with more people saying stuff now, but I don't think that's just because I've lost weight. I think it's because I also have a following and people are just very, they just want to share their opinions. Like, obviously when you lose a lot of weight, you have loose skin. I still have it. I haven't gotten it removed. And there are a lot of people that for some reason, they are annoyed that I haven't gotten it removed. I think because, and I understand, like people, they see me and maybe they might think that I have just like thousands and thousands of dollars just sitting around to be able to get the surgery, which I don't. But I have been offered it. Like I was offered it by a few doctors and stuff. But like my first viral video was me talking about how like, I'm okay with my skin and I don't necessarily want to get rid of it. And that's still where I'm at, right? And I am very lucky. Loose skin is very different for everyone. Some people deal with a lot more than I have. Some deal with a lot less than I have. But for me, I'm very lucky that it doesn't affect my life too much to where I can't wear a t-shirt and feel like, oh, it's super obvious. Like there are people that they can't wear a t-shirt. It's even obvious in the t-shirt, right? Or it's even obvious in like they can't wear a tank top or stuff like that, right? I'm lucky that that's not the case for me. And so I don't feel super self-conscious. I don't have any pain from it. And so that's kind of where I'm at with that. I don't have like, as far as like people commenting on my body, I don't really care. Like people can say whatever they want. At the end of the day, it's not their body. Like, you know what I mean? Like it's not going to change what I do. It doesn't really bother me. I think, I just think because I am so like just comfortable with where I'm at and there's no like hidden agenda. There's no like, oh, I hate it in secret, but I tell people I like it. It just is what it is. It's really just not that big of a deal. It's just skin is the way I see it. So.
Mm-hmm. And so I really appreciate like your commentary and your YouTube channel because, and even right now, everything that you said is very nuanced. And one of the things that I've learned while watching your videos is that like you came from a very like economically kind of like lower income, and that's something that I find interesting because like I come from a somewhat similar background. I also have family members who, my grandma, my sister, my mother, like all diabetic, right? And so like health and fitness wasn't necessarily like something taught to me. It was something I had to learn. And I find that interesting that like with families that come from like an economically like lower income background, there's always kind of like excuses that can be made, like, and a lot of them are valid excuses. Like a lot of the like a lot of the ingredients that you need to be healthy, like sometimes they are pretty expensive, and sometimes there are like advertisements directed at you for like these weight loss programs that cost money that insurance can't provide. So even with like all of that, did you find that as a challenge? And do you hear that like often being used as an excuse, or is that something that And how were you able to overcome that? Because from my understanding, like you were able to overcome that based on like previous commentary and videos.
So for me, I struggle with like putting all of like, I was severely economically challenged is the best way to put it, right? We were very poor. That's the best way. We were very poor.
Yeah.
But I understand that my situation isn't the same as someone else that was also poor. Like it's so hard to say that I was able to get through it. And so you should also be able to get through it, right? Because everyone's situation is different. You might not have a car and you live in what's called a food desert and you don't have access to literally anything other than 7-Eleven. Like that's going to be harder than it was for me that I lived in walking distance to a Vons, which is a grocery store. And so I did often walk to Vons to get the food that I needed, right? And I was very lucky because I think about it, if I wasn't, I don't know what I would have done. I would have had to figure something else out, right? And so I do understand where people are coming from. Like it absolutely, without a doubt, makes it harder to lose weight when you are in that position, because it can be like, especially the health halo foods, like the foods that like are marketed as being healthier, organic, and all this stuff. Those are more expensive. And so people think, and this is what I get very frustrated about this, that it is more expensive to eat healthy or eat in a way to lose weight. And I don't believe that's true. But I understand why someone would have the misconception that it is more expensive, because all the food that is marketed as healthy is more expensive, you know? And so it's really important to me that I share that it doesn't always have to be more expensive, right? It doesn't always, you can find things that are not super pricey that will work for you. Now, it does suck because those foods are probably going to be kind of boring and you might have to eat similar stuff often. And for some people, that's not possible. They can't do it. I am very lucky that I am able to do that. I eat the same stuff almost every day. I don't know what that's about. Some people have said it's like a sign of some sort of thing going on in my brain. Whatever. All right. It works for me. And so that's what I do. And so I really try not to like shame anyone or say like, well, I did it, so you should be able to. But I do think it's important to talk about that stuff, because I do think that there are so many people that like, oh, well, I did it, or this person did it, so you should also be able to do it. I think there is some truth to that, obviously. Like, I don't want to discredit what I was able to do. One of my, I'm going off track, but one of my favorite things, I've made a couple videos about this, but I didn't coin this phrase, but it's the phrase, I heard it from Will Smith. I'm sure he heard it from someone else, but it's fault versus responsibility. And so like, it might not be your fault truly that you are at the size that you are at, or just the situation you are with your health. It might not be your fault, but at the end of the day, it is your responsibility to change it if that's what you want to do. And so it doesn't help you to spend so much mental energy and time focusing on, man, it's not my fault that I'm here. Like, you might be 100% right, but it doesn't change the fact that it is your responsibility to change that if that's what you want to do. And like, basically the way I see it, the content that I make and the person I am trying to reach with my videos is the person that understands that they have a responsibility and they have accepted it and they're looking for ways to act on that feeling, right? And so I want to make videos for them. They're like, hey, you know what? I have accepted that this is something I want to do. I want to change. How do I do that? And then hopefully I make those videos. And then obviously also with the videos where I'm, talking about health at every size and how I disagree with it, I'm hoping that that person that might be a little bit like, I don't know, I'm kind of in the middle, that I can be like, hey, this is what I think. And maybe they'll be like, you know what? Yes, I agree with that. And I want to get healthier or whatever. Right. Because I've some of my favorite comments are people being like, I used to believe this. And then I realized that I was, my health was declining or whatever it might be. And I really appreciate the videos that you made. It just made me see things in a different way. I never like to claim that I'm like some know-it-all. I'm literally just a guy. Right. But it makes me feel good that I'm doing something, hopefully that's helping somebody, I guess. So.
That's awesome. And I feel like I'm kind of, to what you guys were talking about and growing up, like, I feel like, total opposite side of the spectrum. Like, my mom was the absolute almond mom, health nut, like, and so I've developed, very unhealthy habits as an adult that I've been trying to reverse to kind of get me in a healthy body and state of mind and self-confidence and all that. But on the opposite side, and it's hard on both, you know, edged swords, I think. And I'm curious, you know, because you really seem to care about health and just helping people in general kind of feel good about themselves and figure out what that healthy, you know, range is for them and their body types. I'm curious, do you get kind of commentary from both sides? Like, do you have viewership on, you know, both kind of ends of the spectrum, and what kind of are those, you know, interactions like from people on both ends?
Yeah, so I would say that the majority of my audience are people that either want to lose weight, are, you know, losing weight currently, have lost weight, you know, that kind of part. But there also is a percentage of people that are, you know, coming from maybe similar to where you're coming from, right? Where they've been in the health space, and they you know, they were in the fitness space. Maybe they competed. Maybe they realized that, well, wait a second, this thing that I thought was good, is there are some negatives to it. And they're realizing that the things that maybe they learned were not the healthiest. And so, yeah, there's definitely, like, it's interesting because there is some overlap. I mean, I will say that the majority is, you know, coming from a similar place as me. I think it's just because people can relate to that, and which I honestly is fine with me, because I'm not some guru. I'm just a guy. And so, like, it makes sense that people that can relate to me more follow me more. You know, it's not surprising to me, and it doesn't bother me or anything like that. But there definitely is a sect of people that are, you know, they've never been overweight. And then I do think there's also, like, people that maybe have people in their life that are overweight, and they're trying to understand, how can I help that person, right? And so, yeah, there's a little bit of overlap, but I will say it's probably majority of people that are coming from my position, maybe.
Interesting. So one thing that you said just right now that I thought was interesting is, like, you said, I'm not a guru, I'm just a guy, which is like, always beware of people who claim to be gurus. Sorry. And I'm also trying to, like, battle the sun, so I'm like flipping over. But yeah, so that's just something like I've always been, like, super conscious of, because I didn't really start caring about my health until I went to San Diego, because I went to college in San Diego.
Oh, okay.
And that's when I was like, everyone here looks really, really good, and I should really start, like, looking at what I'm eating, and I think originally it came from, like, a negative, like, influence. Like, I didn't want to become fit because I wanted to be healthy and to live a long life. I wanted to become fit because everyone around me was fit. And so I think that's kind of like where I had to also, like, during that time, like, unlearn some negative practices. Like, intermittent fasting is just another word for starving yourself. For some people it works, but for other people, like, at least for me, let me just claim, for me, it was a version to, like, cut calories and to, like, not eat, right?
Yeah, you're not alone in that. You're not alone in that, 100%.
Exactly. And so so a lot of the things when it comes to, like, the toxic health space that's, like, concerning me right now, and I really want to get your input on, are, like, these GLP-1 agonists, or like these drugs, like Wegovy,
yeah, like Ozempic,
like all that kind of stuff. Is that, like, in your opinion, is that more just, like, marketing, big pharma, like someone trying to make a quick buck? Or how do you see that kind of, like, affecting, like, the toxic fitness positivity space?
Yeah, that's a tough one, because I'm not against them at all. I actually think that they are, I don't think, that's clear, they're incredibly powerful. Like, the most, almost, like, I've always said there's no magic pill or bullet, but it's like the closest thing that we have ever seen, right? And so it's clearly working and helping a lot of people. But also, there are downsides, like anything, right? And so I've made quite a few videos. I actually had some people, and I was like, you're right. Be like, you're only making videos about the bad parts of this. Like, you're only talking about the negatives. And I was just like, you know, okay, I see where you're coming from. I think, like, for me, the reason I made quite a bit was the over, like, if you looked at the media, it was all basically, this is great, this is the magic bullet, this is the pill, this is it, right? And so for me, I was like, okay, there's enough people saying that. What's the other side of it, right? And then talking about the side effects. Like, a lot of people, well, a few people, but very prominently have said like the mental health effects of it and the negative side of that were like severe for them. And that's horrible, right? And other things like there's GI distress, which is pretty normal. Most people, it seems like most people deal with a little bit of GI distress and other things. It's really tough because like I've always said, especially like my message, and maybe this is to my detriment, but like I'm always thinking for the most part, at least where my brain goes initially, is I want to help the person that was at where I was when I was 20, which was terrified. And I'm not exaggerating. I'm 30 now. I thought I was going to be dead. I didn't think I was going to get to 30 years old because of my weight was increasing every year. It felt like there was nothing I could do, which was obviously wrong, but I felt like there was nothing I could do. I felt helpless. And so I can absolutely understand why seeing these drugs can feel like this is the life raft that I've been looking for, right? And so I don't want to make someone feel like they are less than or that they shouldn't take this. I just want people to understand no matter what you're doing, even if you're losing weight the quote unquote natural way, there are ways that you can F yourself up pretty bad. And I went through it. Like I struggled with binge eating because I was like, less food, less food, less food, less food. That wasn't good. Like, yes, I lost weight, but I almost really messed myself up. Right. And so there are downsides of that. And then if you go to the drugs, there are downsides of that. And then if you go even further, right, to weight loss surgery, there clearly are downsides to that. So with everything, it's important to make sure you are weighing all of your options, and I think doing everything you can before you take the next step, right? I see it as like there might be doctors that disagree with me here, but like I think like doing it without any outside help would be the first step, and then maybe trying some sort of weight loss drug, make next step, and then getting the surgery, because that's like there's really like most of the surgeries, it's kind of like a lifelong thing that you're going to be dealing with, which again, there are a lot of people that it helps out. So I'm not completely against it. My stance has changed quite a bit on that stuff. I used to be very like, I lost the weight naturally and it makes me blah, blah, blah. I don't really care anymore. Like for me, what I want people to do is be healthy. And like, so there are absolutely like these drugs help a lot of people be healthy, but what we've seen in a lot of the media, especially like with Hollywood and people that are probably don't need it, that are taking it. And then I personally have problems with like you can just go to like a random med spa and get a syringe full. I don't know how I feel about that. Like I think that if you want to go to your doctor and talk to them and like you guys work on a program together, instead of being like, yo, I'll be in next week. Let me get a syringe. All right, peace out. That just feels a little dangerous. And like you asked, like, yes, of course the companies want to make money. Like that's just how it is, right? Like I'm not surprised about that, but I do think that there are people that it helps a lot. And so I'm not against them at all. I'm just like, I cautiously am excited about it. But I do worry, because people that have struggled with their weight their whole life, they're very desperate. And I don't mean this in a derogatory way at all. I've worked with a lot of people, and this is why I get very passionate about it, because I know that people that have been trying to lose weight for a long time are desperate, and they will listen to people like me that have a following that I could sell them anything I want, right? I understand that power, and I never, ever, ever, ever want to take advantage of that trust, because it really is something that is powerful, right? So I always just try my best to inform people as much as I can and not over promise anything, and like just help people understand what is this thing, what is it doing for me, and do I need it, do I not need it, right? I don't know if I answered your question, but yeah.
I think you did. It was it's just something interesting that I've always like tried to understand, and it's also like for example, my mom takes the pill version of semaglutide, but that's because she has diabetes. And so, but then I also know people, and this is so like side story, there are people who buy these drugs who don't go through a doctor, like they can just order them online somehow. And so there was someone who, like, I didn't know her personally, but she was a very big person. She was a friend of her. She was a roommate of a friend, and she probably, if I had to guess, weighed 400 something pounds. And she ordered Mounjaro, which I don't think is like the same as semaglutide or anything like that, online. And in my head, I'm thinking, if you went to a doctor, you probably could get it prescribed to you. Why are you having to go through this alternate route to get a medication that I believe could help, but I don't know. But also, like, the fact that it's so easily available and like making a profit off of it instead of like trying to go through, it's just so weird to me, because like I understand the appeal of it, and I also understand that this person could have probably gone through a doctor and gotten the same result, except it would have been a little bit probably more, maybe a lower injection than what.
I don't know exactly. I mean, maybe they didn't have health insurance, and they, like, if they went through a
That's
doctor,
true.
it might have been a lot
That's
more
true.
expensive. And so going through, because it might have been like an off brand of it. That's the only thing I can think of. I'm not an expert on that though, but like, I assume my first thought is like it was probably some sort of financial, like it was too expensive if they went through the doctor, so they went an alternate route. And so, but again, I really don't know off the top of my head.
That is a very good point. Emily, I only have one more question if you have another one.
Yeah, I have one more. Okay. I'm really curious. You kind of touched on it, John, mental health a little bit, and kind of the mentality to, to go through this fitness, this weight loss journey kind of on either ends. I feel like you kind of have to be in this really strong mental space to be able to support yourself. And I'm curious, is that something that you kind of recognized, throughout the journey, that you were like, oh, I'm focusing, I'm working on my physicality, but I also, if I want my physicality to be up here, I need to also in exchange bring my mental health to here. If you know what I'm saying, like, did you kind of realize that they go hand in hand along your journey, or was that something like at the start of your journey you were like, I need to get my headspace correct before I even enter this space? And what do you kind of recommend for people who are looking at starting that journey of with their mental health as well?
Yeah,
sorry if that was just
no, that's a great question.
brain dump.
I think, like, if I'm being completely honest, I was 20, I just didn't want to be fat anymore. Like, that was how I felt. I wasn't thinking about my mental health. I was genuinely afraid of dying. Like, that is true. Which is honestly probably a little ridiculous. I think I was just a little overscared. I don't think I needed to be that worried about it, but that's just the truth. But I definitely, it wasn't something that I even realized that I needed to work on until I had probably lost most of the weight. And this is something that I now try and ingrain, or at least like bring it up to people, like, hey, like, if you think losing weight is going to be the magic bullet, the thing that's going to cure everything, I don't want to sound negative, but that's just not, from my experience, that's not the case. Like, it doesn't fix everything. Like, if you like hate yourself, there's a meme that it was posted so long ago, and I've like mentioned it a few times, but it was like this meme from like way back in the day, like Instagram, right? It was like this like really crude drawing of like this kind of chubby like stick figure, right? And it says, I hate myself. And then the next thing was they were skinny, and it said, well, that wasn't it, right? And so it was like, you can't think that losing the weight is going to make you just automatically, oh, I love everything. Like, it certainly helps a lot. Like, and I'm not trying to discount, like, losing the weight was literally the best decision I ever made in my life, right? But there was a lot of stuff I had to work on that was not related to that I feel was just as important to maybe not losing it, but keeping it off. Because losing the weight compared to keeping it off is relatively easy or simple. Like, you just have to eat less and move more, and that's kind of what happens. But there is so much that goes on once you have lost the weight that to keep it off, that if you're not in at least an okay headspace, it is very hard to maintain, right? And so that's why I always tell people that I personally have always said that I lost weight from a place of self-love instead of self-hatred. A lot of people are like, I hate myself and I just need to lose weight. And it's like, from what I've seen, you will lose the weight, but it doesn't change anything, right? Like, I have always said that losing the weight was the biggest form of self-love that I could have shown myself. Because again, like I said, I wasn't sure how long I was going to be around, and I didn't want to not be around, so it was like, we need to make a change. But I think it's important to try and work on them like if I was to talk to someone that wants to lose weight, but they're struggling with those kinds of feelings, I wouldn't say you need to figure out the mental side before you can lose the weight, because I don't think that is very helpful. And that's going to make someone feel, in my opinion, at least if it was me, I would have felt very discouraged if I heard that. So I think you can absolutely start the journey, but at least be aware, hey, let's work on, if you have those feelings, let's work on it in, at the same time, in tandem with the weight loss. Like working on that stuff together, I think is the best way to be successful long term. That's my goal for everybody. I don't care how fast you lose the weight. I really don't care how much weight you've lost. It doesn't matter to me. I want you to lose it and keep it off. And that's the most important thing, right? And so I think having at least being in an okay spot with your mental health, doesn't have to be perfect. Mine isn't perfect, and I would never claim that it is. But that, I think, is very, very important in keeping that weight off.
Love that answer. Thank you.
Yeah,
thank you.
It was really good. So my last question is, when it comes to doing commentary in both spaces, like both the body positivity and the health and fitness industry, which one do you find to be a little bit more difficult to like navigate? Like, which one is more difficult to, which one do you get like flack from when you make a video or something like that? Like, which one is more kind of like, not inflammatory, but you kind of get like a lot of, like crap about what you talk about?
Yeah, I would say they're both different in their own way. But I would say, like, I personally have dealt with more pushback from the like health at every size kind of space. There's like a term that's used called exfat. That's what I'm called. I'm an exfat. And so like there's definitely been more pushback, but honestly, like both sides, I think like I think I understand. I think the reason it comes more from that other side, like the fat positivity, is because I do believe that a lot of people in that space genuinely believe there is nothing they can do about their weight. And so they feel like it is an integral part of their identity, similar to if someone's color of their skin or their sexual identity, right? Like there have been many times where like people on, the health at every side kind of size thing will say it's the same. It's basically the same thing, right? And so I can understand why someone would feel more like viscerally upset about someone talking about how they don't agree with what they're saying, because they are feeling like their identity is being attacked, right? Versus most people at the like health side, a lot of times I feel like it's a lot of people that like the videos I make are like more like grifter types that they don't even really believe what they're saying, but they're making money. So they're just going to keep doing it. So they're like, whatever, like as long as because like I'm not getting millions of views on my videos, so I'm not going to like shut someone down. Like it's, for the most part. So they're just like, whatever, like they just don't care. Like, well, it doesn't, if this isn't going to affect my money, whatever. Right. And so I think that I just haven't dealt with that because they're not attached to their feelings as much as someone on the, health at every size thing is. But it doesn't change the fact that like I still disagree with what this person is saying. And it's like, I'm not in my videos, I try my best to not try and attack anyone based on how they look or anything like that, because that's not going to help. And it's too easy for someone to be like, well, he attacked how I look, so I'm not going to listen to anything that he said. Right. And so I try my best to be like, let's talk about what they said. And, but yeah, so I definitely I've dealt with more negative attention from the health at every side space. But again, it's like, I understand why. And so I don't really get too upset about it. It is what it is. Like, I understand if I make a video talking about something and someone is upset about it, I put myself in that position. So like, it is what it is,
Yeah. And those were pretty much all our questions. So I appreciate you taking the time to speak with us, especially because number one, there's a 3-hour time difference between where you're at and where we're at. And then also because we had to reschedule. Yeah, so I appreciate this very, very much. So John, thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for having me.